Welcome to CR370, Task 2 Elaboration. So I've gone into Moodle, gone to the assessment information and scrolled down to task number 2. There's your submission portal and it's around week 10. Here's some guidelines for you there, but here's a modified unit template we're going to use and a modified lesson plan which is relevant. So let's and then some exemplars we're going to examine today. So they're where you can gather the information for you to construct your task. Let's go back to the unit outline and so that we can see exactly what's required in terms of the task. Under unit information, here's our unit outline. And let's unpack those things. Scrolling down, what is it? It's a task where you create a unit plan and it has peer critique. So there's two sections to this. One is create a unit plan using the 5E science framework, and you include literacies and Christian perspective, and you complete a peer review of those things. 60%. So it's substantive. So it's not a light touch task. It's something which is substantive. Going down to the elaborations that are here, you notice that this elaboration talks about the unit plan and it talks about the peer review. So it talks about nothing particularly different here from what's in the description, 5E model, integration of those things and incorporating some assessment along the way. So here's the theoretical justification for it, knowledge of the curriculum, teaching science, integration and so on. The essential components give a little bit more legs to the assignment. So you complete a modified unit plan. A minimum of 5 lessons in the sequence of 5E, because that would be 1 lesson per sequence, but you're not limited to 5. If you did 7 or 8, that would be quite appropriate. At least 4 assessment activities need to be integrated into your unit. 1 moderate summative, in other words, not an over-the-top summative task, but one has got enough weight to it in terms of being comprehensive, and 3 smaller diagnostic ones along the way. You're going to do what I call a showcase or an illustrative example of a practical lesson, is another deliverable, and you'll put God Big Story links throughout the unit. But one of those has some elaboration to it, but not all of them. Lastly, there's a self and peer review feedback that you will use, which is on the assessment information tile. So they're the elements that are going to be delivered into your lesson plan. So let's go to those elements and have a look at what is required. So I'm going to pull and open up the modified unit plan. Swing that across. It's there. Now in the modified plan, you've noticed some of this before. Title information. Now rationale needs to be included in there. So in other words, what's the reason for this? What are we doing? And so on. So you're writing a rationale. The intended learning outcomes, your content descriptors, and the general capabilities that you wish to cover in this. And that's expressing how it's going to be integrated. 1 summative assessment ready to be completed here. And like all unit plans, know, do, and value are some of the goals that you're going to do over the course of this unit. And the processes and skills that are applicable are science, process, and skills, and science, knowledge, and understanding. And Christian perspectives will be drawn from those. So go into the curriculum to ensure that you have the right language around those. Going through, I've got rid of a lot of things from the unit plan that has been previously used. So this here is, this is where you're going to put down your learning objectives from here, K1, D1, etc. We'll go down here. This is your sequence of learning approaches, so that's an outline of each phase. Content descriptors that are going to be covered in that phase, and any formative assessments that are particularly applicable for this phase. Of course, your summative will be somewhere down the end, I imagine. So the phase using the 5E models, for example, the first one being engage. explore, explain, etc. So type that in. Now this has got space here for 1 or 2 lessons, so you can just type away there. Now, one has to be an elaboration. So if your elaboration of your practical lesson might be in the explore phase, so we've got engage, explore and explain. So you would have this will have more detail. 2 ways you can do this. You can actually add the detail in this space right there with a full lesson plan type format, or you can indicate see attached lesson plan, which I think is probably the easiest way to go because you can add it subsequently as an appendice and go through the phases there. So the other phases won't have the same detail as your showcase lesson, practical lesson, but it will have enough detail that I can see that, okay, you've got a developmental sequence of learning going on here. So I don't need to see every link, every question you ask, those sort of things. No, this is more of a summary of what you're covering in here. So that's your unit plan, slightly less than previously that you've done. Going to have a look now at an example of that unit plan that is there. So scrolling up, now this one here is from a previous iteration and I've pared it back or slimmed it down. So they have the science, it's a chemistry unit, this example from one of the exemplars. Here's its rationale. Don't need all these things, I've cut that out. But yes, you'll intended learning outcomes, and notice you have all your general capabilities, particularly literacy and numeracy, have been elaborated down here. And notice you've got inquiry skills here, and also knowledge and understanding skills. Descriptors are there. So that's standard. Now, I've cut out the achievement standard. It's not relevant to the focus of what we're doing here. The focus of this is to develop a developmental sequence of learning. Summative task here, quite elaborative. Formative tasks, they've listed them. Now, what they're going to do here, we've changed that. I've cut that out because I'm getting you to put it into here. We've changed that slightly as well. So that's still relevant. And you notice now that we're improper into the learning activity. So this is what I call quite extensive summary. There's phase 1. Phase 2. So that's about right in terms of depth. Phase 2. Phase 3. 4. Etc. So that's a reasonable amount of depth that I'm experiencing there, and so I'm quite happy with how that student has integrated all the things together to go forward. I've chopped this out in terms of what was needed. Okay, so that's slimlined it down, and here is they've got a little bit of an explanation about the assessment for students. What they now have appended is their showcase practical lesson here. And they've gone into more detail about what you would be doing in that lesson. I think this is probably a little bit underdone in terms of what could be a highest quality submission that is there. Although they've indicated their resources and they've used another external link to those resources. So that's what you would appendice to this project. So what else is needed? Well, the last thing is that we have to do is the feedback. So in the Moodle site, we have a section here. This is going into Moodle and scrolling down. And what do we have? We have Task 2 response feedback template. Also, that's a modified lesson template for you to use to your showcase lesson. Clicking on that, we'll pull that up and see what it is, and I'll pull that across. So this is here. What significant feedback did you get from your peer? How I use this feedback? An example from Task 2 and how I've implemented this feedback. So this might be, I plan to do this. Here's the evidence of it. And there's some more reflective questions for you. So this is both your reflection and peer reflection. Now, it doesn't have to be limited to 3. I think 3 is the minimum, but there might be 4 or 5. So when are you going to gather this feedback? We're going to gather this feedback when what I call a substantive draft. In other words, your unit plan is not finished because you're going to make changes. So when it's a substantive draft, give it to your peer. A critical friend is sometimes it's referred to, and get some positive feedback which you can then implement, and you document it through here. So 3 would be the absolute minimum. I think 4 or 5 or 6 is probably going to be appropriate for what you do. This is the feedback. This is what I'm going to do about it, and here's the evidence of how I did it. So you might reference here in explore phase lesson in C, the learning activity has been reconstructed with more student pair share group work or something like that. Might be an outcome of that. And then you go through here, what are these things that you can keep, what I need to keep doing, how can I improve, in this, what was the most particular feedback that you're looking for, and so on. And if you want to have some general comments at the end. So it doesn't have to be over the top, but at least have to show that as a practitioner that you're seeking professional feedback and seeking to refine on the basis of professional discussions that you have. So that's our unit. Going back and circling what we have to do. We have to do a unit plan. It's got to have integration of literacy, numeracy, and in ICTs. And what we didn't put into the ones that we in our exemplars, you have to have a Christian perspective throughout. And I suggest you use God's big story as that perspective. You'll be submitting modified unit outline, a modified lesson plan appendice, and appendice also is the feedback form. Bingo, you have it done. Start it early. Pair up with someone to give you that feedback on your draft as part of this unit.